A lot of people ask me questions about genetics or the environment and free will and personality, and these are very deep questions that will really affect your mindset and your view on life if you think about them deeply. The main question that people want to know is their personality a product of genetics or the environment? And as a person who actually studied biology, this is a bit of a frustrating question that a lot of people ask, because the answer is actually both. It's both, and they don't actually conflict with each other, they complement each other. Now, I know that the media and a lot of teachers will try to frame this as it's either the environment or genetics, and this is really annoying. It's a very simplistic way of looking at things, and I'm not always sure why they phrase it like that. I think they're really ignorant about how biology actually works, or are they trying to set up some kind of false dichotomy because they have some kind of agenda where they want to try and convince people of a particular way of thinking. But just to give you an example of how genetics and environment don't contradict each other, you might have a genetic trait for attention seeking. That's a very common one with people. We're social animals, so we need to get attention sometimes. Like a baby needs to cry. And when we're older, we want to get attention so we can get friends, and we want to get attention so we can find someone to marry, and so on. There's lots of reasons. At work, we just want to get attention for help. There's lots of reasons why we want to seek attention. Now, that instinct to seek attention, that's genetic. But every culture and every person does it differently. As I said before, a baby will cry, and some men will kind of just go quiet and look around, and that's their way of getting attention. And some women might put on really tight, loud, leopard skin yoga pants to get attention. Those are all different ways of getting attention, but they're all from the basic instinct to get attention, which is programmed in. And the variation is from the environment, what we'd call the culture or the sex or the person or the environment where they're in. Is it work, or are they in a casual environment in public? So the environment very much affects the genetics, and the genetics very much affects the environment in a complementary way. They're not competing with each other. It's not one or the other. And there's no personality trait there that has yet been found to have no genetic basis. And I mean, that's kind of obvious to me, but it's not obvious, I guess, to a lot of other people. And likewise, there's no personality trait that doesn't have some kind of environmental or cultural element to it. So don't get fooled by people who say, oh, is it genetics or environment? It's both, and they don't fight with each other. They work together, hand in glove. Regarding free will, to understand the question of how free will actually works in relation to genetics and the environment, I think it's really important that we understand what feelings are. Feelings are the human version of instincts. We're all quite familiar that animals have instincts, but for some reason we're not too comfortable admitting that our feelings are the same thing as instincts to an animal. And so when you're looking at a beautiful young person that you find attractive, that feeling of attraction, that's all instinct. And when you see a spider or a snake, that kind of recoil in fear, that fear response, that's another instinct. And people tend to accept those ones. But there's more complicated feelings that we have. When we look at a delicious meal, we go, oh yeah, I'm quite excited about that. But when we look at disgusting things, that's also an instinct. That's an involuntary response we have. And some people have a greater disgust reaction than others, and they're more sensitive to things that are disgusting. But other things, if you see someone kick a puppy, a lot of people have a gut reaction to that. They feel disgusted by it. So even our morality is driven by instinct. It's not well, I logically concluded that was wrong for that larger person to kick the small puppy, which was helpless and defenseless. That kind of reasoning actually happened after they decided it was immoral. So they're kind of trying to explain away the moral bit, and that's quite a fascinating thing, but I won't get sidetracked on that. Anyway, so this is how animals operate, and we understand how animals operate emotionally, and animals are very predictable. Like, if you spend enough time with animals, you kind of work out exactly what they're going to do in any situation, because they just simply obey their feelings. They have a feelings to action thought process, or thought process, if you want to call it that. It's a bit simplistic, and you'll see why later on. I know these instincts in animals control very complex behaviors. Like, have you ever noticed that dogs really like poop? Now, humans don't like poop. We've got a human instinct to say, oh, yuck, waste, oh, poop, gotta stay away from that, oh. That's a natural human response. But you might have noticed that dogs are like the opposite. They're like, oh my god, poop, that's amazing. Oh my gosh, gotta sniff it, gotta roll in it. And the funny thing is, if you've ever wondered why do dogs roll in poop, it is thought that because dogs are hunters naturally in the wild, they're derived from, descended from wolves, that they need to be able to sneak up on their prey. But a wolf or dog has a very particular smell, and their prey have a very good sense of smell, just like the dog does. And so what the dog does is they roll in poop to disguise their smell, preferably the poop of their prey. And so their prey, who's always nearby their own poop, they can't tell that the dog is sneaking up on them, regardless of where they are, upwind or downwind. And the dog never goes through a thought process of going like, this poop, if I roll in it, that will camouflage my scent from my prey, allowing me to get really close before they know that I'm there. No dog ever goes through that thought process because dogs don't have words. They don't have the words necessary to do that kind of abstract planning. And likewise, there's an example which I think a lot of people could relate to. Women tend to really like to dress up. Like, they instinctively are gravitated towards fashion, towards makeup, and dolling themselves up. And the reason for this is to attract male attention, or to court male protection and resources. And it's very doubtful that many women think of it like that. Like, oh, I'm going to doll myself up so men will be giving me free stuff and attention and protection. They'll just be thinking, I just feel like doing it. It just feels like the right thing to do. And they're just simply obeying an instinct. And so whatever they say they're doing, it doesn't really matter. They're obeying an instinct, and that's the result will be that they'll get a lot more attention if they doll themselves up in a particular way. And so, as you can see, like, human beings, we're not actually that different from wild animals. We have these instincts. Now, the issue, which a lot of you might have realized, is that animals don't have free will. And we know they don't have free will because they don't have words to think with, to plan, to come up with abstractions, to see the unseen, these are the things that you need to be able to do intellectually in order to make a decision. And because a lot of our actions are simply based on, oh, I feel like doing that, I do that, a lot of people don't have free will, or at the very least, they spend most of their time not exercising their free will. And I'll go so far as to say that, because free will is what I call an emergent quality. So an emergent trait or quality in a species is a trait that's just recently evolved, and it hasn't spread out to all the members of the species. And so in the case of free will, not every person has free will. You need to have a certain degree of self-awareness, of self-restraint, impulse control, and the ability to observe your feelings, to name your feelings, and to be able to plan and know alternatives. If you can't do that or don't have all of those things, particularly the emotional self-control, then you don't actually have free will. You're just kind of reacting, and you're very predictable. And so my view is that it's very much like it's a skill that you need to practice, like learning to ride a bike or learning to draw. These are very challenging at first, But over time, as you keep practicing, you get better. And free will is much the same. Like at first, it's really hard to control your feelings, but then later on, you kind of go, yeah, I'm better at observing them. I'm better at staying calm. And I'm better at taking my time to plan and consider all the options that I have. I want to bring up an example that's I think is particularly relevant at the moment, because I see a lot of anger and conflict amongst people who really should be working together and not fighting with each other. And I'll go through how I understand what's going on with this conflict. So regarding, say, the lockdown or the virus and the face masks and stuff like that, a person will say, look, I believe that this is how masks work and the problem with them. And someone else will say, oh my gosh, I can't believe you believe that because I believe this and you are just wrong, and I can't believe you'd be so wrong and to tell other people wrong things. Now, it's not important to me what those two people believe in. I don't really care what their viewpoints are. What's important to me is that they just get angry with the other person purely because they had a different opinion, like they had a different view on how masks work or the lockdown or whatever. And they just instantly get angry. And what's going on there is I think that human beings have, we have this instinct to get angry when someone expresses a belief that we don't believe in, that's not held by us. And the reason why we have this instinct is to try and enforce conformity. So every time someone expresses an opinion that is different, we get angry with them, and that kind of suppresses it, like saying, you really shouldn't have that opinion, you shouldn't have that belief, and then it encourages people to conform. And the reason why we want people to conform is that conformity is efficiency. Like if we have one language, one religion, one culture, one set of manners, one set of rules and laws, everything just runs very smoothly because we all understand each other. We're all easy to understand, and we don't have many conflicts because we don't have many disagreements. But when you have lots of rules, lots of laws, lots of different cultures, lots of different languages, lots of different customs, it's very easy to have a conflict. It's very easy to fight and have a disagreement, to get angry with each other, and you don't work together as a team, you don't cooperate, you don't help each other, you don't support each other. It's very inefficient. And so it's a very good reason that we get angry with people when they express an idea that we don't like. Because it is good to have some conformity, what I call essential conformity, so that we can just function efficiently, so we can work together, cooperate with each other. But the problem I'm seeing is that this anger is really strong with people, and it's so strong that people can't break out of that instinctual, mindless mindset of like, oh, they said something I don't believe in, so I'm angry with them. And that's not helpful. I mean, this is a very challenging situation, and it's really good if we can entertain different ideas and learn from different ideas and try to reach a more sophisticated conclusion. But we're not going to do that if we're just kind of dividing into as many teams as there are in a football or baseball championship and just like going, well, my team's right and you're all wrong. It's not very helpful. What I find really funny is that you come across some people who they call themselves pro-diversity, but as soon as they hear me say, oh, look, I don't actually believe that people like diversity, I think people like uniformity, and that's why we get angry when people express new and novel opinions, we don't like it. They instantly get angry with me and say, well, I like diversity. And it's like, well, you don't, because you don't like that I disagree with you, because you just got angry with me, and that just kind of proves the point. And it's really funny because they don't like diversity either. And then they don't know that they don't like diversity. And this is the kind of a sign where you see with these people where they're all instinct and they're not thinking. They're not free will. And, you know, like I've met a lot of people who've had this experience, a similar experience to me. And it goes like this, like, I met a libertarian once, and they were telling me all about, taxation's actually theft. And I got really angry with them. I just instantly got angry. I felt really angry with this person because I thought, how could you suggest such a thing? That's crazy. That's outlandish. Do you not care about the poor? And do you not know how economics works? Blah, blah, blah. And I really ripped into this person. I gave him a really hard time. And I actually really feel sorry for that. I hope one day I can chase him down and say, look, I'm really sorry for giving you that hard time. But anyway, a few months later, I just kind of realized, like, actually, no, he was right. He was absolutely right. I mean, there's nothing to say that it isn't theft. And my whole anger reaction had just been an instinct, and I was kind of embarrassed when I realized it. And I thought, yeah, like, a much better way for me to have responded, it was not just not to get angry. I mean, I think it would have been useful to observe the anger because, just say it wasn't about like libertarianism. Maybe this person was trying to get me to join a cult or to take my life savings in a pyramid scheme or something. Then it would be a very good thing for me to kind of get angry with them. Just so that I can say, look, I'm going to reject your bad idea because your bad idea is trying to lead me into a trap that's going to hurt me. And so there is that value in having that anger response. So it's not that I don't want to be angry at all. It's just that I want to be able to observe my anger and not make a decision based on my anger. So that if I'm talking to someone and they're trying to help me, I can accept the help and learn and grow from them. But also, if they're trying to subvert me, manipulate me, exploit me, I've got that anger there to protect me. Say, no, I'm going to reject that. And so it's a very delicate balance, and that's the problem with free will. It's a very delicate balancing act or temperance way of managing your emotions. If you can't manage your emotions very well, you don't actually have free will. You're just very mindless and predictable. And I see this a lot with a lot of the protesters that are going on at the moment. In particular, I've seen a lot of videos with Antifa where someone has simply pointed out to Antifa, oh, that woman over there, she's a racist. And they just attack that woman or that person, that man, whoever it is, like they're like guard dogs, like they've been well trained. And it's like they are so well trained that they just follow their instincts, that there's no thinking happening at all. They don't even question, like, maybe they're not actually racist. Maybe I'm just being manipulated by that person to attack someone. Just because that person wants me to attack and I'm being used. They don't do that because the feelings are so overwhelming. They can't go through that thought process. And I've also seen it with feminists where someone simply goes, oh yeah, that man over there, he's a misogynist. And they just decide, oh, I hate that person. I'm not going to trust him. I'm not going to be polite to him. I'm not going to be nice. I'm not going to listen to him. Even though he may not actually be a misogynist at all, but they've just been so well trained, like instinct, I'll react, I feel, yeah, I hate that person. And you can't deal with these people because it's really odd. See, if you're an honest person, it's really hard to deal with these people. But the funny thing is, if you're a liar and you're a very confident liar, very good at deceiving other people, then these people are really easy to control. Because you just tell them a few lies and you get them just dancing around in a circle doing whatever you want them to do. And so liars like it when people are overly emotional. They kind of like to raise the tension and anxiety in a situation because that allows them to have more control over other people. And you kind of see this in abusive relationships where they're constantly ratcheting up the drama to get people's emotions running because that makes it very easy for them to just simply tell a few lies. And like, we all know, I mean, this is just a fact of life, that women on average are more emotional than men. And what that means is that more often women can be manipulated by a liar or a trickster than men can. I mean, it's not to say that men can't, just on average women are more likely to be manipulated like that. And so we all know about a woman who is trapped in an abusive relationship with a guy who's just a scoundrel. He just lies. And we kind of go, like, how come she's so trapped? And the thing I often point out is that that woman is a sensitive, emotional woman, and that makes her very easy, very vulnerable to be manipulated. You have never seen a calm, rational, logical woman in an abusive relationship, because anyone who is capable of being calm and rational, logical, just can't be manipulated, or not manipulated easily. It requires like insane levels of genius and coordination to actually manipulate someone that clever or self-disciplined. And this is actually minded at you because women on average are more emotionally excitable than men, and there's fascinating reasons for why that would be the case, but we won't go into that just yet. But women have this more excitable emotional nature, and you see it in advertising, like both in the commercial area and in politics. They're mostly targeted towards women because advertisers know that if they can manipulate the feelings of the audience, they can get them to buy a particular product or vote a particular way that suits them. And women are on average easier targets than men, and so most of the advertising and the consumerism is focused at them to manipulate their instincts. So where does free will come from? And as I was talking about before, animals have this feelings to actions pipeline. It goes instinct, feeling, action, action, action. And humans, we can be like that if we aren't properly educated, and this is a big issue. Like, children often don't get the right environment to nurture this aspect of humanity. And what is really healthy for people, is to break up this like feelings actions pipeline, and you want to put thinking in the middle. And I'll break that down a little bit more. You want to have feelings. You want to be able to observe and name that feeling. You want to be able to think about that. You want to think about options, different things you can do. So this is kind of planning. And then choose which option, which choice you want to make. And then you have your action. Then you take action. Once you can do this more complicated thought process, you have free will. Now, it's complicated because there are some things where, like, a lot of people don't like the taste of medicine and they have to swallow this really nasty, bitter pill. Now, you would never naturally swallow this bitter pill because, it's bitter, yucky, I don't like bitter things. But you might do it because you're sick and you want to get better, so you're willing to take the pill, the bitter pill. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that you have free will, but it might be an expression of free will because you're overriding a natural instinct. But it's complicated because you might be under pressure from your doctor or from your family to take the medicine, and you might not actually want it. And so you're still not actually making a free decision. Because if you're still feeling that pressure, that social pressure, that fear, that's more emotion there, you're not actually exercising free will. So it is a really complicated thing to actually be in that right frame of mind to make that free decision. And so it does require this self-discipline to go, yes, I have a feeling. I'm just going to observe it. I'm not going to try and make somebody else manage my feelings. Like, I'm offended. Oh my gosh. Every time someone says they're offended, they're just admitting that they can't control their feelings and that they're just a mindless automaton, because it really doesn't matter that you're offended. Like, the other person, like, all offended means is simply, oh, you're expressing an opinion different to my own, and I just feel instinctively angry because you have a different opinion to me and I want you to conform to me. And that's just blind instinct. And the thing that always annoys me with people who say they're offended, well, like, yeah, but I have a different opinion to you. And so logically, since our opinions are equally different from each other, I have to be equally offended of your opinion as you are of mine. So we're, like, equal. We're at an impasse. Like, if we're going to resolve this, you actually need to do some thinking. You have to go, well, why don't you like my opinion? What are your reasons? And I'd say, look, the reasons why I don't like your point of view are X, Y, Z. And this is where, like, well, the best option, the best plan should actually win the day. And we both win if that's the case, but unfortunately, people get hijacked by these feelings and go, I'm offended, and all I do is feel angry. And they justify it. And this is where you see excuse making. I don't want to sound like I'm picking on fat people, but it's you see, like, I see kind of two types of people. Like, they'll come in and say, look, I'm overweight, and one group will be like, I'm going to go and lose it. I'm going to learn. I'm going to exercise. I'm going to get some self-discipline. I'm going to eat less. I'm going to have a better diet, healthier diet, and they will lose the fat, because as much as they like ice cream, which may be their crutch, or chocolate, whatever it is, they want to be healthy, and they've thought about it, and they're going, I want it, I crave it, but I'm not going to let that feeling, that instinct control me, that instinct to have sweet things control me, and they do something different, and that's exercising free will. Whereas you get this other group of people who kind of like, yeah, I'm fat, I'm overweight, and instead of like trying to overcome their instincts, they just keep eating, they keep having the poor lifestyle and habits that are keeping them unhealthy. But what they do instead is that they use their intelligence not to make themselves healthier, but to try and justify their unhealth. And they start to say, yeah, look, I'm fat, but I can be healthy fat, and or I can be attractive fat, or there's this problem in the world called fat shaming, and it's a moral dilemma, and I am fighting against this fat shaming thing with every mouthful I take. And these are just excuses. Like, they're not reasons. And it's really important to understand. Like, people who have free will have reasons for why they do things. People who don't have free will just have excuses, where they're just trying to justify what they're going to do anyway. They try to make it heroic. Like, I'm heroically staying fat, when they're just justifying their instinct to eat sweet things. That's all they're doing. And they're not doing anything about the problem they have with the health problems that they get, and the other lifestyle problems they get with it. And if you can't kind of let go of those excuse making habit, and say, look, I can't just let my feelings rule my life, then you're trapped. You can't break free. You don't have free will. Like, you're no different to an animal or the dog. I mean, it's just a fact of life. I mean, you might get upset again, but that's just another instinct, and I'm sure you will. If you can't control that, then I can't really expect you control your anger when I say something that you don't agree with. Anyway, so oh god, I was just thinking about another example. Like, a lot of people will say, like, I had to hit this person, I had to slap him, and they come up with these really... So just because you're driven by instinct doesn't mean you're dumb. Like, there's a lot of very high IQ people with no free will, and you can tell them apart because they're really good at making up stories and manipulating people. So in that case, this case I was thinking of, it's like this woman slaps a man, and her excuse was that, well, his words were violent, and they were violence-inducing. He was the one causing the trouble, and so if I didn't do something about it to stop him from talking, it would have been a lot worse. So I'm actually the hero of this story because I hit him. And it's like, that's totally an excuse. There's no reason to hit someone, and there's no such thing as violent words or violent-inducing words. It's just a person who lacks impulse control. But what's happening here is that the brain, the thinking part, the illogical part of the brain, is not making the decisions, but it's trying to justify the feelings. That's all it's doing, justifying the feelings. And that's a really dangerous trap to get into, and why, why you have even really highly intelligent and creative people with lives that are completely chaotic and out of control, because they don't have that self-control. And I want to end this video by talking about an issue that's really close to my heart, and it's the issue of kids and what happens in government schools or public education, and it's the problem with having strangers raise your children is that they're you've got a teacher, you've got lots of kids, you're outnumbered. It's a really stressful environment, and people don't like differences, and so they don't. The motivation, the incentive for the teacher is not to teach children how to think and reason, but rather to teach them to all think the same way, to conform, because that will make the life of the teacher a lot easier. And it's not something I think teachers plan to do, but it is part of the problem with the factory education method that we've been using for the last century. And it's my view that this has been one of the biggest mental health catastrophes that our civilization has ever faced, and that is factory schooling. Because I believe it does is that with each generation, it does more damage. Like, just say 10% of children lost their ability to think freely 100 years ago, and then it got to 20% another 10 years later, then 30% another 10 years later, then 40% another 10 years later. As each generation goes through, and they've got parents who are more driven by feelings, more emotional, more hedonistic, you see a gradual decline in the culture. And I put the blame squarely on the education system, because the education system isn't about self-discipline, it's not about manners, it's not about self-control, it's not about using your words and your logic and creativity to solve problems, to find out all the options you have. It's about conformity, factory conformity. And it's very dangerous because it leads to a society where people can't handle differences of opinion. But more tragically, in the issue of free will and genetics and the environment that I've been talking about, is that you've basically got an environment that is suppressing human potential, like taking away a person's potential for free will. I mean, not every child could gain free will. They just don't have the impulse control or the natural aptitude for it, but I think most kids can. Like a huge, I don't know how many. It'd be very interesting to find out, but we won't find out if children aren't free to be challenged this way, or to learn this emotional regulation. But the impact of a person never learning free will means that the whole rest of their life will be full of relationships with conflicts. They'll be getting angry all the time. They don't know why. They can't resolve conflicts. They probably won't even like other people. They probably think people are just terrible. They can't enjoy relationships. They have unstable marriages. They have poor relationships with their children, all because they don't have the right mindset to actually approach these things. And so, like, a whole lifetime is just filled with pain and suffering and chaos and disorder because of something that happened in their childhood. And the worst thing is that because people are so resistant to new ideas, and naturally, they won't even be open to the possibility that, oh, yeah, I did get badly treated as a child, and that was a bad thing that they did to me, and there's a better way of doing it, and a better way of behave. I mean, people who have a particular trait, which I probably should talk about very briefly, like openness, they're always open to new ideas throughout their whole life, though they do have limits. Like there's always a limit with a person where they've got a sacred value and they just won't be open to contradictions to that. And there's probably a good reason for some people to actually have those sacred values, because they have thought about it deeply. But the problem is that a lot of people just simply have the same values and beliefs that they had in childhood all the way through the rest of their life. And so they don't actually have very deep thoughts and complicated ideas. They've just got lots and lots of excuses and no rationality. And I really urge parents to think about this, that if you want to cultivate your child's ability to think freely and for themselves and independently, I don't think a government school is a good place for them, or certainly not a factory school. And you'd be doing them a world of favor to homeschool or find a school that actually teaches these valuable skills like self-control and self-discipline. Otherwise, I hope I can communicate the amount of damage and pain and anguish that this actually causes people, because I try to tell a lot of people about this, like, you've actually been traumatized, you've had a really rough childhood, and a lot of the time they just don't believe me, because they believe they did have a good childhood and they don't want to hear a different opinion on that matter. And their minds are closed to it. And it's a terrible tragedy because so much of their potential is just lost to that. Anyway, I hope you liked my discussion, my ramble on this topic. I hopefully it gave you some very good insights. And until next time, per spera ad astra.